Hello and welcome to All Four Wins Football. We have got just a few days until the WSL kicks off. So obviously, with all of that in mind, we're going to talk about all things Europe and completely ignore the WSL until next week. If you're up for that, come and join us right on the other side of this. Yes, I mean, I say ignore. We've not ignored it. We did it last week, so we wouldn't have to do it this week because we knew there was almost like we planned it, isn't it? So there we go. Listen, the gang is back together. We are ready for a great conversation. There is so much that has happened across the women's football globe that we felt we needed to have a little chat about it. So that is absolutely something that we're going to do. And speaking of not from this land of England, we've brought in a Welshman in Sean. How you doing, sir? Everything all right over there?
I like to be considered continental all of a sudden. I like that. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Not too bad. You know, already 90 minutes into my YouTubing for the evening. So very much looking forward to the second half, which should all be good. And speaking of looking forward to the second half, Liberty, I'm sure you were too. But we'll get to that at some point, I'm sure. How are you doing? All right?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good. So there we go. That is where we are stood. And we are going to be talking about all manner of things. You've already seen them on the thumbnail that we put up at the very beginning. We're going to be talking about Champions League draws that were made on Saturday. Sorry, no, it was Sunday. We're going to talk about the NWSL, the Scottish Premier League as well, and of course the start of Liga F that occurred over the weekend. We're going to spend a little bit as well about people retiring. There's all sorts happening, so let's stop beating around the bush and let's start talking about what is happening. I'm going to throw up straight away the joys of the Champions League draw, the very first one that happened on the Champions Pathway. Remember, 4 of these teams make it through to the league phase. Simple enough question, really, to the pair of you on this one. Are there any there that sort of catch your eye? I mean, we've got the Norwegian champions, Valerenga, there against the Hungarian champions. In fact, what's really good about all of these is that literally, because of the Champions Pathway, they're all champions. So maybe I won't say champions for every single one. But you've got Ukraine against Belgium there, Austria against Denmark, and of course, Poland against Netherlands. So maybe Liberty can give us a little bit there about GTS Katowice as well. But yes, talk to us a little bit. What do you reckon? Are there any there that sort of really shout out to you as being a good game?
Yeah, I'm really liking the Vorskla versus OH Leuven game because I think Leuven surprised a lot of us. I think beating Rosengard in that final, which is, I take my Swedish Damallsvenskan knowledge from Liberty, and I know that Rosengard are a good team. So for Leuven, in their first ever appearance in European football, to defeat a team as historic and as good as Rosengard, I think is a really, really, fair play. Got to give them a lot of credit. Vorskla have a lot of the Ukrainian national team as well. And what we saw against, I'm going to mention Hammarby early on, but the good part, against Metalist, I think Metalist were a lot better than a lot of us thought they would be, and they've got a good chunk of Ukrainian national team players. So I'm really interested in seeing how that Vorskla Leuven game goes, because I think that it could be a really, really interesting 2 legs.
Yeah, I agree with Sean. I think Tony's pointed out in the comments as well. The Rosengard that we have this season is not the same as last season. There's been a lot of change, and they are really not in a place where they were when they qualified for the Champions League at the end of last season. Lost so many players, so many key players in January. Haven't really replaced them in the same way, and they have struggled. They are decidedly mid-table, despite having what for Hammarby is a dreadful 2-2 draw. For Rosengard is a really good 2-2 draw, even though they blew a 2-0 lead 2 weeks ago now, 10 days ago, 2 weeks on tomorrow. There we go. So yeah, it's surprising purely because for the pedigree and the Rosengard that we could have had, but at the end of the day, it has to go off to them. I think that we have teams that have experience in the group stages of the Champions League in this section, even from last season. Vålerenga were obviously in the same group as Bayern Munich and Arsenal and Juve, and St. Pölten were in the same group as Man City, Barcelona, and Hammarby. That's up to about 4 Hammarby mentions already. So these teams have, and Twente have experience off the top of my head, in this later stage qualifying at least. So these teams have
the group stage is 20 with Chelsea, Real Madrid,
Yes.
and Celtic last season. Yeah.
Thank you. I had it in here, but I couldn't remember what year because they also had Chelsea also had Ajax not too long ago, and I didn't want to get confused between the two. Thank you, Sean. So these teams have experience, and they're coming up against teams that don't have this level of experience, which I think is interesting. But I also think at this point of qualifying, it's really interesting to see where different leagues match up with each other, because there is no Manchester United, there is no Eintracht Frankfurt, etc., in this path, in this section of the pathways, the Champions pathways. So we get to see where the smaller leagues match up, which I think is the most interesting part about this qualifying format, because it's unconventional and it's really annoying, but it does make for some really interesting matchups, and I'm excited to see who comes out on top, because technically, yes, we could say Vålerenga, Twente, St. Pölten should come out on top, but that's not a guarantee at all. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
No, fair point indeed. We tweeted out over the weekend as well that obviously Katowice, I believe it was them, are the lowest national coefficient side left back in there. Well done, Barry. I managed to say that absolutely correctly when I was panicking slightly there because I thought I got it wrong. But again, Liberty, if you've got an opportunity there just to tell us a little bit about them, because as you say, we've got 8 champions there, but whatever happens, we're going to get 4 champions who are in St. Pölten as well. I'll ask you about that one, Sean. Do you think there is any benefit to be had by the fact that they get to drop straight in at the third qualifier round, or do you think the other 7 teams, they're playing 7 teams, it's really Fortuna Hearing that have got the benefit there of having played some games already? Does that give them a little bit of an edge because of the fact that they've had a little bit of experience? So there we go. There's your next 2 questions.
In terms of someone like St. Pölten, I think it's difficult. It's difficult because would you rather have a break or would you rather be match fit? And you can debate that all night long. Everyone will have different answers. So in that respect, I don't think it really matters. But I think Fortuna Hearing is a really interesting one because I think they got 2 really late goals against Hibernian to get through to this round. And I think they're Danish champions for the first time since 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So I think momentum, having something like that happen to you on your journey to this point, I think is a real advantage. So in terms of being dropped in, or would you rather sort of have a break? I think it's something you can debate. But me personally, I'm a big fan of momentum. So yeah, but it's going to be really interesting ties for sure.
I think I agree with Sean, but I also think that quite a few of these teams would have played a couple of league games before these games. I know that the Polish league has already restarted, the Ekstraliga. I hope that was correct. So I know that they've got maybe 3 games under their belts. And hi Connor. So momentum in that sense is helpful. At the same time, it's not the same, especially if you're playing a really low-ranked team in your league. It's going to be completely different than playing Champions League qualifier against Twente, for example. But I guess it's then that's similar if you're playing a team that came through the first round of qualifiers, which is technically the third. I don't remember what the numbers are. But if you are well rested and this is your first game, say, of your league season, then you can just hit the ground running and you've kind of got nothing to lose because you've got nothing to really go off of. So I guess there's plus sides to both. I think momentum, as same as Sean though, is really key and could be the deciding factor on if these teams have a cup set or not this early on. Do you have cup sets in Europe? I don't. Is that an English thing? I'm going to go with it. But yeah, I think it is a case by case sort of situation. But I think momentum never really hurts anyone, especially if you're on a really good run of form or you've had a big comeback and you've kind of running off that adrenaline of look what we did last time. Let's keep going. Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, no, very good. Sounds absolutely sensible to me. So that's the Champions pathway, which, as we all know, is made up of the champions. But there is another pathway for those who have been watching and paying attention. And that pathway is, of course, the league pathway. So the league pathway looks a little bit like this. And this is where, and this is what I find really bizarre. And I'll just like preface what I'm about to say now by I'm not trying to be disrespectful to any teams whatsoever, but like, I've heard of these teams. Like the other side, you don't necessarily hear too much of them because their league isn't necessarily as publicised. Whereas literally every single club in the league pathway I've heard of and could tell you a little bit about, maybe not a huge amount. And I just think that from sort of my point of view in that respect, it's quite sad that actually we know more about, I know more about teams that have finished second and third within their league rather than the champions across Europe. And that's why it was, to me, really quite important to put this explainer together and try and make a little bit of a big deal out of the first round of qualifying and the second round of qualifying, because these are teams that have gone on incredibly big journeys themselves. They've won their domestic leagues and they never get really seen or spoken about because they eventually get engulfed by all of the other big clubs. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with that one. But here we have got 5, frankly, huge ties. I think there's some really big matches that we can look forward to here. And very interesting again as well that they go for seeded and unseeded. I think I'd still much rather they just threw them all into one bowl and just pulled them out and stopped worrying about trying to give a team an advantage. Why don't you just listen? We'd all love it if they drew Real Madrid against Atletico Madrid. That's a great game. Let's watch it. You know, it'd be awesome to see Brown against Hecken. So these are things that I think would be quite nice to see. But obviously, we've said they're big games standing out. Sean, obviously for me, the one that stands out is going to be Brown against Manchester United. It would do because that's my team. But looking at that list of 5, which one stands out the most for you? And going to what Liberty was saying, is there one where you can see a cup set, where you could see an unseeded team potentially knocking out a seeded one?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Brown Man United because you covered it brilliantly on All for United earlier, so I'll leave that to you. I'm not going to talk about one game because I think Liberty will go at length about that one game because I think that game is the biggest and the best in this entire tie. But Hecken Atletico Madrid, I think, is a really underrated one. I think Hecken have a lot of quality players, and I'm going to go Schroeder straight away because I still can't believe she signed a new contract. I think maybe Hecken are maybe securing themselves a little bit. If she does come in for, they'll get a really nice fee for her. And I'm really looking forward to seeing her against an Atletico Madrid team. And I think we can say this about a lot of teams in Spain, maybe bar Barcelona, but I think you can maybe drag Barcelona into it. Is that it's just question marks. I don't really know what any of them are. I think we saw that in Liga F this weekend. There's a lot of, didn't expect that. Oh, that's a bit odd. So just seeing those two clash together, and we talk about being in season. I know Liga F has just started, but, Hecken coming into the real business end of their season, they're going to be right up for it. The mentality, the quality. Probably they're going to be more switched on than Atletico Madrid. So I think that'll be a really good tie. But we talk about Queens question marks. I do expect Paris FC to beat Austria Wien, but Paris FC have lost a lot of quality as well. You look at Nandozi, you look at Bussy, you look at Tinney retiring as well. They've still got Clara Matteo, who is fantastic. And then you look at Roma Sporting. I think that could be more even than people think. I would still back Roma to go through, but I think Sporting quietly had a really good window. But I know there's one big game there, and I think Liberty's got a vested interest, we will say.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Eintracht Frankfurt versus Real Madrid is going to be really interesting. It's going to be really hard for Eintracht. I'm going to put this out there because the sheer amount of players they have lost this summer and still could lose with the transfer window closing this week is immense. Lara Prasnikar went to Utah Royals yesterday. Rumours today that Arsenal won Geraldine Rittler. They've also lost Tanya Palavec, who went to Union Berlin. They lost Stina Johannes and Sophie Kleinhorn to Wolfsburg. And that doesn't even start to list the players that they lost before the season ended because their contracts ran out and they didn't renew new ones. Sophie Natchingal, more that I can't think of off the top of my head. So it's going to be tough, but they've brought in really good players. They've held on this far to Laura Freigang. Who knows if she's still an Eintracht player by the end of this transfer window? I would say yes, purely because she loves the club so much. And then you have Real Madrid, who brought in a lot of players, a lot of quality players. Obviously, my big one is they brought in Bella Anderson, 18-year-old centre-back from Hammarby. But they have some real talent as well. They've obviously lost some players. But I'm never truly... And they've got a new manager. But I'm never truly convinced by Real. Sarah Holmgard as well. Thank you. That was another name that I could not remember off the top of my head. That is a massive signing for Madrid. But I've never been truly convinced that they work together, that it is a team that looks to really do something or push. Obviously have been in the group stages. I mean, both of these teams have been in the group stages of the Champions League now, which will be the league format from this season. So it's not like one has more experience over the other because both have got group stage experience. So I think, honestly, it comes down to whoever's having a good day on the day across both legs for this one. Don't think there's any real clear-cut winner. I think Real will potentially struggle against trying to contain Anyomi and Freigang and Rebecca Blomqvist, who they just signed from Wolfsburg, who looked really good in the friendly over the weekend against Lyon for Frankfurt. And then on the other hand, Eintracht will struggle to contain Linda Caicedo and these other players that Real have that are really good. So I think it just depends on who turns up on the day. And I think it will probably be close. I think there will be goals from either side. I think it'll be close across the two legs. But other than that, I think, that's the most interesting of these matchups, purely on paper, because I think they are quite similar standings, both in their leagues, sort of a step away from the top. Obviously for Eintracht, that's Bayern and Wolfsburg, and for Real Madrid, that's Barcelona. But they're still very good teams, and two teams that realistically do deserve Champions League football. I think it just depends on who decides that these games are theirs for the taking. And look, if Real played like they did over the weekend, I know we'll get into it. I'm not convinced that they'll come away with the win, but they can always change that. I think that's going to be really interesting. But at the same time, Häcken, I think, is going to have a real opportunity to do something. Obviously, Atletico won 5-0 over the weekend. So they've shown that their defense is really good, but Hecken's attack is incredible and have scored, I'm going to spitball, nearly 50 goals in the league this season. Somebody please fact check me because I did not look that up beforehand, but I'm pretty sure it's nearing 50 goals for the season. Schroeder's on 20 already, maybe more now. She scored over the weekend, so it might be more. So it depends that way. I think technically Atletico could do it, but I don't think it's going to be easy for them. And the rest of the game, Sean so wonderfully went into, so I'm going to stop talking now.
For sure. I think some good ones. The one that sticks out for me, honestly, is Roma and Sporting, because we've seen Inter Milan finish second in the Serie A, and they're out. They're going to be taking part in the Europa Cup. They are not going to be touching the Champions League, obviously. So with the runners-up of Portugal taking on the third place team for Italy, I think there's a bit of a ding-dong battle that could potentially happen there as well. And it'll be very interesting to see, like I say, how the chasing pack in Portugal are getting on with the chasing pack in Italy. So, yeah, I think that one will be a really, really good game. I want to ask you both one question based on the draw itself. Do we think that this idea of separating the Champions pathway and the league pathway when they've got to this stage, the third qualifying round, is a bit antiquated, and perhaps we need to consider just throwing all of them into one bowl, for want of a better word? Because, as we just said, you've got 8 teams there in the Champions pathway. They're probably, in the nicest possible way, going to be the teams out of those 4 that when they make it into the Champions League group stage, especially with the way it's going to be now, it's not a group of 4. It's going to be a whole group of 18 teams with which you play 6 matches. The chances are they're going to end up getting beaten, possibly quite considerably in some of these. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys a little bit more experienced around the European leagues than myself. Do you think it's the right thing to keep the champions separate from the league pathway and then give those teams in, or do you think they should earn their way into the group phase by having the opportunity to play against one of the other teams, possibly from the league pathway as well?
Well, if you're champions of your league, of your nation, you should be in it. Theoretically, the ones who are going through the league path, they're lucky to be in it. Because I remember when the Champions League was about champions of nations competing against each other. Like, you can't be qualifying 4th and going into the major European competition and winning it. Like, absolutely, if you've gone through a whole domestic season and you've come out and when you've won your national championship, you deserve to be in the Champions League and you deserve to be facing other champions. The ones who have finished 2nd, 3rd in Germany, England, France, whatever, that's lucky. They're on the lucky side and they deserve to have tricky draws against the other teams. So, no, there should be a champions path because the champions deserve a chance to represent their nation in Europe's and one of the world's biggest competitions, and the ones in the league path are probably a little lucky to be there.
Yeah, I think for the most part I agree with what Sean's just said. I also think there is a point of what Barry said in the build up to the question, which will remain true, is if Twente, for example, played Real Madrid in a qualifier, there is no way to say that Real Madrid wouldn't stomp them 10-0. That is probably a poor comparison, but Twente is just the first team that I remembered from that list that came to my head. But these are... Ignore Twente. Say someone else in that list, because maybe Twente is not the right choice. But smaller leagues are less likely to have fully professional players, to have the caliber of talent that Real Madrid have, that Eintracht Frankfurt have, that Bran have even, and then they shouldn't have to go. They shouldn't have to, similar to what Sean said, win their league just to play a team that is in a better league and finished third, to destroy them at the first opportunity, because nothing's stopping Real Madrid scoring 10 and in the second game just sitting back and closing up shop and it ends 11-0 on aggregate across the two legs. I think you have to have this separation between the two sides, because the split in women's football is still so large that it's not a guarantee that all the teams in the Champions pathway are fully professional or have international talent like the league pathway has. Now that one day when we get to a point where every league in women's football is fully professional and there is a spread of international players across the whole world, not just Europe, then we should revisit and have this conversation again and think maybe it needs to change in some way. But unfortunately, until we get to that point, we have to have some separation, purely so teams in the Champions pathway have at least a chance of getting European football. Because if they didn't, we could have, 3 teams from England, 3 teams from Germany, 3 from France, 3 from Spain, and basically 3 from Italy, even Portugal, and basically no one else. And basically, we all got a bit fed up when Chelsea and City played each other about 3,000 times last season in a row. Imagine that for the whole season, because Chelsea go from playing Arsenal in the league, then they play City in Europe, and then they play City in the league, and it would just be like, oh my god, this is so boring. The excitement of European football is seeing these teams from leagues that you don't have access to regularly. And somebody's just said, first time I agree with an Arsenal supporter, which is really making me giggle.
Wowzers. And knives are out on that one. To be fair, I tend to agree. And it's just, you try and look at this from a neutral and a central standpoint of it, of course. We all love the idea of it being the Champions League and it just being the champions that take part. Of course, totally agree with that. But we all know that's never going to be the case. There's always going to be these additional berths that do come through, if only because of the fact that the more notable teams at the moment are the ones that come through on the league pathway, as we mentioned it. And there's a reason why I brought this up as we sort of traverse from the Champions League over to the Europa Cup, and that's because the whole qualifying system, and I feel almost like an expert now, having spent so long writing about these qualifying rounds and putting the teams together, even though I can't pronounce half of them. What I find really interesting is we had a first qualifying round. Not a single team from that first qualifying round is in the third qualifying round, in the Champions pathway. Not a single one. And the mini tournament phase meant that only 2 of them finished third, which means that out of the first qualifying round, these champions, only 2 of them, that being Athlone Town and Fomget, that's it, ABB Fomget from Turkey. They're the only 2 that won in the first qualifying round that made it to the third place qualifier and won. So they've sort of disappeared, and they've now disappeared out of Europe completely. They're not going to get any European competition whatsoever. Whereas, again, some of these other teams that have just parachuted in, finishing runners-up or third in their division, will have the ability to drop into the Europa Cup. And it kind of got me thinking, because that's quite a thing. You were talking about these people being the champions of their nation, but they're gone. And it's still these runners-up and these sorts of people that are indeed in the team. So let's get the Europa Cup draw up, because I think it was very good that we've got this brand new competition that we can look at, and I think it's going to be, for me, really enjoyable, really exciting. But it just felt a bit bizarre. I mean, Glasgow City, they didn't even have to play a third place qualifier. You know, they lost their game and then that was it. They knew that whatever happened, they were going to be in the Europa Cup, because even losing, they were still going to make it through. So we sort of had this conversation when we did the preview of the Champions League. So I don't really want to go too deep into the change in the structure. But I just, like I say, just wanted to note that, because I think it's a bit sad that teams that were in the Champions League first qualifying round, now they're just not even strong enough to have ended up in the Europa Cup. And that's why I was kind of bringing up the idea of mixing the pot. But let's talk about the Europa Cup, because this is amazing. By the way, here we are in this wonderful situation where we've got our first ever trophy. History. It's absolutely amazing. And some really nice ties in there. And certainly some nice ties domestically. You've got Glasgow City, as I mentioned there. They'll be playing Athlone Town. Ireland against Scotland. That's going to be quite a thing. Hibernian, they are in there as well, with an away game to, of all teams, Inter Milan, which isn't necessarily a game that you would have expected to have had here, having lost to Bram. So some really big ties going on there. Are you guys as excited as I am about having this competition? Because I do think that, bearing in mind there's going to be 9 teams that also drop into this from the third qualifying round, this is quite an exciting tournament. I'm really looking forward to this. And this is something that, you know, again, for me, it's going to be really helpful in trying to increase my knowledge of these teams outside of the leagues that I am valiantly attempting to keep up with.
It's brilliant. You know, as you mentioned about the coefficient there, and, you know, I cover Welsh football, and we look at Wales and the coefficient, right? There are 51 European nations who have women's teams and play in women's UEFA tournaments. Wales are 50th out of 51. None of our teams have won in Europe since 2019. No one has scored for 6 years. Like, it's a competition like this, which I hope when Cardiff City, Wrexham, TNS, whoever it is, win a game in Europe, gives them a chance to go into this competition, because it just raises the profile of leagues and the profile of nations. And this is what it does. And you look at 2 Scottish teams here, Glasgow City, Hibernian. Hibs are, I think, desperately unlucky, potentially, because they've had a few players pickpocketed after an incredibly good season in the SWPL last time. Glasgow City, Athlone Town. I watched Athlone beat Cardiff City 4-0 quite comfortably. I thought they were a really good team, but just ran out of steam. Again, I think it was Breidablik of Iceland they played in the previous round. So that'll be a really good battle. But you look at some of these teams here, you know, teams who have been in the Champions League before. Villaznia, I remember in the Champions League. Cost would be a really difficult opponent. Someone like Anderlecht, who are got a good couple of young Belgian players, but Aris Limassol of Cyprus have signed, I think they've signed a couple of Australian players, Aris, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be a good battle. Ajax there again. And for those bigger teams like Ajax, for Inter, for even a club like Anderlecht, PSV, like, this is a chance to be history makers. This is the chance to be, you know, first name on a new trophy. I think that's really good. And I love the fact there's no group stages. I love the fact it's just 2-legged games all the way through. I think that makes it a really exciting challenge. The only thing I don't like is, where can I watch it? I don't know if someone has picked up the rights. I'm not sure if Disney Plus have themselves got the rights to it. I don't know where I can watch it. And if it is solely on Disney Plus, I think that's a real shame, because I don't like a lot of women's football going behind a paywall. Like, I know it'll have to happen eventually, but I don't think we're at that stage yet where everything can go behind a paywall so quickly. That's a whole other discussion for another day. But overall, I think it's a really good competition. I think it will motivate teams to want to do well in it, to beat that first champions in particular.
Barry, you said in your question, are you invested? Are you excited? I kind of have to be, because Hammarby will play the next qualifying round after this one. So yes, I am. I hope they get selfishly, I hope it would be really fun if they got one of the Scottish teams, if they got through, or even Athlone if they got through against Glasgow City, purely because then maybe I could go to watch. I've never been to Scotland and or Ireland, so it would be a fun adventure. But yeah, look, the same reason why I love the Champions League itself, other than Ajax, PSV, and Inter, and Rosenborg, I don't think I've watched a single one of these other teams play. And if I have, oh wait, no, I've definitely watched the Scottish teams when they've been on Sky Sports the odd time last season. So other than those teams, I don't recall watching any of these teams play, which is half the fun of football to me. So I would so excited to have that opportunity once again, whether it's going to be played. I have a similar issue if it's behind a paywall or Sean, then what's the point? But new adventures, new players you can like from watching these teams, which is once again half the fun. I'm invested because as you've both alluded to, this is the cusp of history. Like no other time can people say they've watched a team win a trophy for the first time in recent history. First time trophy for one of these teams and potentially one of the qualifiers in the next round. That's like so much fun. And I'm excited to see how this format works, as Sean's just said, straight knockouts. And as it's been alluded to, two-legged final. We haven't seen one of those in European football in some 10 years at this point. But it's also a trophy of trial and error. You can't really have too much trial and error in the Champions League anymore. But here we can try something new and we can learn what works and what doesn't work. And that is also interesting from a footballing brain point of view, because this is potentially where we can pull away from the men's side of football a bit more on European standing and see what works for women's football as opposed to just copying the men, which is always great in my eyes.
I'll be honest, I'm really looking forward to the two-legged final. It's been ages, like you say, since we had them, and I can remember, I'm sure we had two-legged finals in the men's game back when I was younger as well. I don't feel like I'm scratching my head too much on that, but I'm sure I've definitely seen. Maybe it was just lots of final replays back in the early days that I can remember, but there was definitely, I'm sure, some two-legged ones. So really looking forward to that. Sipaway, no, I'm afraid it won't be. They're not the home of the Women's Champions League now, has just been said. Shane is completely right. Disney have the Champions League rights now. But Sean is also correct that nobody knows where the UEFA Cup, as it would be for the women, is. So Europa Cup, don't know. I've tried to have a Google, see what I can find. Nothing. Every time you write it down, it just tells you about the Europa League, not the Europa Cup. So it doesn't appear to be there. But I don't know, maybe they'll stick it on the UEFA website because they do have UEFA TV on that, don't they? So there is the possibility that maybe they're waiting for it to be picked up, and if not, then it will just be hosted there, in which case if it is, that will of course not be behind a paywall. So there we go, some big ties coming up over that, and very much something that we're looking forward to, so can't wait. And you know, it's not what I've written down at all, but I do feel like this is a decent branch to go down, because I've heard this a lot, boys and girls, and I'm going to ask the pair of you your thoughts on this as well, because at some point, you know, we've got a lot of people. Let's put this right. There are a lot of people out there across the land of women's football who are genuinely out there going, women's football is the greatest thing I've ever seen. I love it. I'm a really big fan of it. I really want to support it. I think it's amazing. You get all of that until it goes behind a paywall. What we need to understand, I think, personally, this is just my opinion, is that eventually that's going to happen. If you want sponsorship to come into the game and you want more money, TV companies aren't just going to keep coming in and going, let's do it for free. Now, I know that DAZN tried this. They tried to put it behind a paywall. There wasn't so many people signing up for it. And I just wondered, do you think maybe there's a lot of lip service that's going on with women's football at the moment. Because for people to be sitting there and saying, yeah, I'm well behind it, but then not to be willing at some point to, put their hands in their pocket for a subscription for something. What do you reckon? Because at some point it's going to happen. It has to. It's like that's the way the world is working. At some point it's going to go there. I don't know. I'm sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place because I want to see the game grow, and to get that, you need to get a fan base that's well up for it. But I think back to 1992 when Sky Sports took over and made the Premier League into what it was, and how you had to have a subscription package for that as well. It's a really, really, really tricky situation. So, Sean, I'll let you kick off on that one because you mentioned about not really wanting it to be behind a paywall. I can understand that for Europa Cup. It's a brand new competition with some smaller teams in it potentially, so you're not necessarily going to have that opportunity, but at some point it's got to happen, hasn't
it? Right, there's a British viewership and we take a lot of interest in mainly English football, so I'm going to just base off of that first of all. So the majority of WSL games are on Sky Sports this season. All of the FA Cup is on TNT Sports this season, and European competitions is going to be on Disney Plus. Okay, so that's 3. How much do you think a month it'll cost for you to have a subscription so you can watch the women's football you want, just to watch those 3 competitions: WSL, FA Cup, Champions League? How much a month are you going to have to pay? £80 is the answer. £80. If the subscriptions were cheaper, all for it. Happily pay a tenner a month to get some European football or to watch the majority of the WSL games. No problem with that at all. But £80 in the current climate where everything, not only political, it's a cost of living crisis, everything else is going up, everyone's bills are going up. Unfortunately, that you don't have the luxury to pay £80 to watch the major 3 competitions. I'm sorry. And we're all champions of women's football. We all love it, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that we also have to admit it's not where we need it to be in order for people to, okay, we're ready to pay £80 for a subscription. We're just not there yet. And that's why we need to garner more interest. Look how well the Euros did. Free-to-air TV. Look how many people are talking about it. I've got family members who never talk about women's football, suddenly talking about it. Now all of a sudden, how can I watch more? Oh, you need to get that subscription, and that subscription. Oh, I can't afford that. We're simply not in a place right now where people to pay £80 to watch all 3 of the major competitions. And that's where I know it needs to happen, but to happen now with all the climate around it and everything else going up, I think despicable is too strong a word, but I think it's really wrong.
It's hard. I mean, Liberty, I want to get your point on it as well. But Alan's put here $4.99 a month to get the Champions League matches. Now, I don't know. I've got Disney Plus, so I assume Disney Plus for me is $10.99. So I'm assuming this is a separate thing where you can just get it purely for the Champions League matches. Do you think there's an option that way, Liberty? Because Sean's right. And the problem that you've got when you step into women's football is that, as indeed Nikki did manage to identify, there are a lot of different groups of people. You've got people that are already into football and have been watching the men's game and are embracing the women's game as well and quite interested to watch that. They've probably already got all of those subscriptions that you're talking about because they've been watching it. So it doesn't really affect them too much. But if you are, like you just said there, Sean, somebody new coming into the game who's been watching it, growing with it, enjoying it, just watched it on the Euros, to all of a sudden say £80 watch everything is quite a lot. So do you think maybe this sort of thing from Sky, if they could put out a watch every women's WSL match for, I don't know, £10, £15? I mean, I get mine from Now TV because I refuse to pay Sky £100 or whatever it is they want me to pay just so I can have 799 channels that I never watch and 3 that I occasionally do. So I get mine through there, but it's still a lot of money, as you're quite right to say. So what do you reckon, Liberty? Is there a possibility of doing that?
Yeah, I think the issue is it's all at once. It's not like right. First off, let me say something. The FA Cup being behind a paywall is disgusting and the complete opposite of what the FA Cup is all about. The FA Cup has always been access to football for everyone throughout the English football pyramid. That is the FA Cup. In a nutshell, that is the whole point of it. So for that to be behind a paywall, meaning that viewers can't live up to the point of the FA Cup, is disgusting and despicable. And I think it is really wrong across both men and women's football to have it behind a paywall. Outside of that and my issues with that itself, I think somebody like me who comes, or Barry or Sean or people watching who come from a football family, yes, as Barry said, the likelihood that they already have access to these channels is quite high, and obviously then you can just watch it. But similarly to what Sean's saying, the first thing that families are probably thinking about dropping if they're struggling financially is stuff like Sky or TNT or Amazon Prime, because that is not a necessity. And if it's between watching football and putting food on the table is always going to be the option that you should go with. Please don't starve because you can watch football instead. That just no. So that is one thing, and I am in a fortunate position where I know that my family have those things, so I've never been one to miss a game in women's football because of that. At the same time, it shouldn't have to come to that. This just goes across all of football once again. This is both men and women's football. People should have access to entertainment, and they should not have to pay extortionate amounts of money to watch football, because the likelihood of the prices in women's football going up means that more people won't be able to go to games in person. The whole attraction in some point of women's football has been it's cheaper, so more people can go and people enjoy it and they come back. That's not a bad thing, because access is the first hurdle people come across. And if you have what I like to call like fringe enjoyers, people that have watched a couple games are not truly invested, they're not going to pay 50 quid a month just to watch women's football. It's not going to happen because they've got more important things they can spend their money on. So I think this idea that WSL is 90% behind a paywall now, then you have Champions League behind a paywall, and then you have FA Cup behind a paywall, all at the same time in the same league season, it's just going to be a step too far. And I think, yes, we have to get to a point where technically we have to have it, but it's like, for example, people say to me quite often when I have conversations with my friends, they go, how can I watch Damallsvenskan? Like, you've talked about it so much. I'm so interested. I want to watch it. How can I watch it? And I always say, especially if they are friends of mine who are based here in England, or I have a Dutch friend who's also asked, and I've said, look, here's how you can watch it. Whether if you're in the Netherlands, it's via Play, as Tony said, he's got it. If you're here in England, it's Fancy. Then my caveat is always, it's $8.99 a month. And I don't expect anyone to pay that to watch football just because they're interested. So then the next thing I say to them is, there are now we're at a point now where some of the Damallsvenskan games are on SVT every weekend. You need a VPN to watch them, so you can say you're technically in Sweden. But that's free. And so I say, look, you can do that instead, and you don't have to pay for it, and you're still watching games. And they say, okay, cool, thank you. And then they watch it, and they're like, this is great, thanks. But you shouldn't have to pay money just to be a fan of something. We also get to a point now where we look at the quality of the broadcast we're now paying for, and we go, is this actually level with what is the production level with what we're paying for? And in many places, a load of research into broadcasting in women's football, and in most places you have players being called the wrong name, managers being called the wrong name. I heard somebody today called Dario I can't say his last name, the Brighton manager. Somebody called him Derek. And I was like, you are a fully professional in this sport. Why the hell have you called him Derek? Because that's not his name. Once again, apologies that I really struggled to pronounce his last name, but you know who I mean. Players getting their names wrong all the time, not just being called the wrong name, but completely mispronouncing it, which is just truly offensive. Really poor quality of broadcast, whether that's the camera is really bad or whether that's the pundits generally just don't know what the hell they're on about. Is that a product we should have to pay for? Because if the quality of what I'm watching is not equaling with the money coming out of my bank account, I don't want to pay for it. Because where the hell else is my money going? If you can't get the quality of your broadcast on several levels to a good standard, why the hell am I forking out to watch it? Because that is just despicable in my eyes. I don't get it. I have the same issue in the men's game, but this is a women's football chat, so we'll stick to women's football in this one.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult one. Shane, all I'm going to tell you, Shane, is it is $10.99 because that's what I'm paying, mate. I can't tell you otherwise. There might well be an option for $4.99, but I don't think you understand how much I dislike ads. I tried listening to the rest is football because I thought it was a really interesting chat that was going to happen with Marcus Rashford. After 5 minutes and what must have been 6 ad breaks, I turned it off. I refused. I'm not going to sit here and just be having ads thrown at me that often in the manner they were. And of course, YouTube then want you to get the ad-free version, and that's just not going to happen, YouTube, I'm afraid, for me. So it is for that one, $4.99. Maybe if you don't want the ads. Sip away, no. I don't think it is different. My Disney is still just film series and documentaries, but it should have the Champions League as well when that kicks off. So keep an eye out for it, because I don't think they're putting a huge amount out around it at the moment in terms of when you go on to Disney Plus, but obviously it will be there. And I've worked it out, and Sean's not wrong. I said that I do mine differently. Now TV would be 40 quid. That's how much I'm paying for that. If you then go for TNT, just getting that on its own through Discovery Plus is going to cost you about another £31. And like I say, $10.99 for Disney, although you can have it for a £5 if you're quite happy to have 700 ads. Yes, I'm paying ad-free, Shane. Absolutely, I'm paying ad-free for Disney. I do not want to be sitting there watching Dumbo and feeling like one because I've got to keep watching things for Tenor Men and Burger King and all that sort of stuff. I just don't have the energy for that one. So, yes, I went ad-free for Disney because I watch a lot of it. So, there you go. If it wasn't something I watched a lot of, i.e. Discovery Plus, I cancelled that, got rid of it, because how can I justify £30.99 a month when there was nothing on? The Champions League's finished, so why am I paying for it? When the FA Cup starts up, I'll consider it again and see if I can afford to put that in there. So yeah, that's where we are with that one. But there we go. That's the Champions League, and it branched out there. Nice question, Sipaway. That's really thrown us through there. I like that. Which gives us a few minutes to run through some of the leagues that have been going on. We'll kick off in America, just to take us out of Europe, just for a brief moment, for a little holiday, shall we say. Let's just nip over there. And really there was a couple of things that I wanted to talk about from there. Obviously, Gotham at the moment doing a great job, a good win for them at the weekend. And as a result, it's put a little bit of a gap between them and the teams below. Not much, only a few points. But it's really interesting seeing how that chasing pack are coming up on the outside. Angel City are going to be playing Bay FC this evening, 2:00 in UK time. That's a big game for them. And whoever wins that is going to have an opportunity to try and pull Gotham back. But my question really, when it comes to America on that one, is which of the teams that are below the line do you think might potentially have the ability to catch Gotham? Because honestly, the last 3 weeks that I've been covering the NWSL, top 8 ain't changed. Gotham have drawn a couple of games before getting to the point where they won this weekend. So what do we think? Is it going to be a case of Gotham giving it up and any other teams being able to get there? Orlando, as Shane says there, they really have had a bit of a drop off and not done very well at all. can you see any of those other 6 teams making it through?
The only one that I think is North Carolina Courage, just because of previous and the fact I do think they have a bit of know-how in how to get into that top 8. But you look at this chasing pack here. I mean, Utah have made great signings, but they're bottom of the 11 points. It's just too big a gap, I think, for them to overturn. Chicago Stars, same amount of points, perennial sort of underachievers, even though Ludmilla, I think, has had a really good season. Bay FC, Charlotte Harper of The Athletic reported this evening that Asat Oshuala is off to Al Hilal, apparently. So that's another big star for Bay FC not being there. Houston, maybe, but and then Angel City, the impending, as Shane says, Alyssa Thompson going. And if he's going to sell your best, along with Katie Zellum, of course, your favourite Barry, who is obviously the best player on earth. North Carolina's the one, but it would not shock me if that top 8 stayed as the top 8, to be honest with you.
Is that pretty much the same for you there, Liberty, in terms of topics? I'll be honest, I don't see it changing. There was a brief moment where I thought it could happen, and I do think if Angel City can get the win tonight against Bay, it's there. It's there for the taking, potentially. Gotham, like I say, have been inconsistent. Or is that really fair? Maybe they've been quite consistent because they've done something like 5-5-5 or 6-6-6 in terms of winning, drawing and losing. So actually they seem to be keeping it quite level in that respect. But can you see any changes coming, or do you think the top 8 has pretty much shaken itself out and we're all just going to have to wait for the post-season?
I think there's more chance of movement in the top 8 than anyone pushing into the top 8, purely because I think Gotham have got in this habit of drawing, and I think mainly in part of that it's because Ann-Katrin Berger's come back from the Euros in great form, and she's one of the best keepers in the league. And I think unfortunately for them, it's slightly imbalanced because they have a really good defensive, and then they'll have really good attacking moments, or they'll have games where they score like quite a few goals, especially someone like Esther, and then she kind of ghosts, and you're kind of like, where's the Esther that we saw last weekend? Where's she gone? Unfortunately, I think that's also just part and parcel of the league and how it operates, not in the sense of like literally, but just like how this league works and how these teams kind of cancel each other out more than in England or in Europe as a whole. You can get, probably the really big game from the weekend, Utah beating Portland 2-1. Don't really think anyone saw that coming, potentially, but really good 3 points for Utah. But as Sean said, still at the bottom of the table. And Portland have done decently well this season. I think they've fallen off slightly in the past couple of weeks, but I think there's some other factors that I won't get into because that's not the point of this. I think there's more likely to be movement in the top 8 than anyone pushing up into the top 8. The one I was looking more closely at the league before we came on, because I watch it, but obviously not as closely as everything else because most games kick off at like 3 a.m. and I like a decent sleep schedule. I am a bit of an insomniac, but not too much. I did not realise that the San Diego Wave were up in 3rd. That has kind of gone under the radar in terms of we've seen quite a few new managers from Europe go into the NWSL this season. And we've also seen some then come straight back out again and go back to Europe. Geraldes, we won't talk about that because I think that's just despicable. But nobody ever said that Jonas Eidevall was a bad manager in the WSL. That was never the issue. But to do so well with San Diego so quickly, especially when in January they lost their best player, and last season you had Alex Morgan retiring, to be 3rd with a team in his first season once again is really good. And I think they have a real shot of, if they can stop drawing so many games, a real shot of doing really well in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to push on for second and or third, because I think those are going to go to Washington and not North Carolina, Kansas City. I think that's pretty much done now. But I think he should have some flowers because I think he's done really well. And yes, Kenza Dali is being incredible. Delphine Casarino, also incredible. One of my favourite players in the NWSL will come surprise to absolutely nobody. It's Hannah Lundqvist, fullback for San Diego Wave. I think he's got a really good squad there. They brought in some really good talent this summer, and I think, hats off to him. He's done really well. And I'm excited to see what he can do in a playoff situation, because we saw him here in England. He's really good in the one-off games, do or die kind of situation. We obviously saw the back-to-back Conti Cup wins over Chelsea. So I think that could translate decently well to a playoff situation. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the playoffs is going to bring, because I think he potentially could have a bit of an upset. Whereas I think if he wasn't there, maybe we'd just be like, Kansas City are going to do the double. But I don't think that's necessarily guaranteed.
I think you're right. It is going to be interesting. And the thing that I found really interesting about this NWSL as well, the difference between first and second is 14 points as it stands, which, by the way, is almost the same difference in points as it is from second all the way down to AFC in 12th. Which is just, if I may use the word, absolutely insane that is the difference there. So quite crazy, I think, on that one. The last thing I wanted to bring up on the NWSL, because it was a record-breaking moment, was Carrington Ream, KK Ream. What a moment for her. She's playing for Utah Royals. She's 16 years old, and she's become the youngest goal scorer in the regular season ever. I wouldn't call it an outstanding goal. It wasn't like, out of the box or anything like that, but she was in the right place at the right time. She did the right things to put the ball where it needed to go. And in that respect, absolutely superb. So, just for neither of you, you don't know if you might have something to say or not, but for somebody of that age to be playing professional football over in the States and starting to come through, we talk a lot domestically about not having a pathway for our youngsters. Not so much of an issue over there, it seems.
Yeah, I think obviously incredible for her to have that record to her name now. Obviously, I think a lot of people, especially outside of the States, have issues with how young their players can go professional. Their youngest professional is 14. That's not even allowed in the Premier League here. But obviously, once again, I really don't want to take anything away from her. Incredible that she's in a position where it is the winning goal in that game. Obviously, Portland get one back, but it's in the 7th minute of a added time. It's Utah have won. And they were, honestly, Utah are unlucky to concede that one goal. It was an absolute screamer if you haven't seen it. From Julie Defure, her first goal for Portland. Obviously, then we have the question of, should 16-year-olds be playing with professionals? Because some of these professionals, especially in America, are 40 years old. You have Martha, who's had a career longer than some of these players have been alive. Obviously, people don't know there was a lawsuit brought by a different player's parents to let her play. I won't say her name because I don't think it's fair to be like, it's her fault. But then rules got changed. They have no real academy structure in the same way. They're trying to create an academy structure, which I think will change the foundations of having these kids, because they are kids, playing in the league. But at the moment, it is slightly concerning that they will just field a 14-year-old and be like, woohoo, we broke the record, the youngest ever player. It's not okay. And then you have in the question of, overworking kids too young. We've seen specifically in men's football, especially in Spain, young men being overworked as a teenager and it affecting the rest of their careers. They're injury prone and such. So it's tricky, but, for her to score that goal, to get it past an experienced goalkeeper in Mackenzie Arnold, and to win the game for her team at 16 is incredible. But then, conversation about having players that are my sister's age playing professional football is one thing, but congratulations to her for getting her team, as I said earlier, really important 3 points, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. And to be a record breaker is also really good, and people know her name, and that's why we're talking about her, which is as well really important, because she could be the future of whatever national team. I'm assuming she'll be a US women's national team player in the future, or if she's not, a different team, she ends up choosing someone else. She's allowed to, brilliant, because we'll always be like, oh, that's the girl who scored at 16. That's brilliant. Yeah, that was really rambly. Sorry.
Yeah, well, like I say, she is part of the US youth national team. So absolutely brilliant. So good stuff for her. Sean, anything to add on that?
No, just echoing. I mean, we can have a discussion morality about a young player, but for a team who really haven't had much to cheer about, and for such a young player to do something like that, I just think that's it's a lovely moment. That's all.
Absolutely great stuff. Right, well, we had a little trip all the way over to America, and we're going to fly ourselves back to Scotland and just have a brief chat about what's gone on there. Obviously, they're not very deep into their season. They've just finished match week 3. Obviously, only 2 games played for Glasgow City and Hibernian, because they were a little bit busy trying to get European football, which was quite nice for them. But it did mean that Celtic and Rangers both leapfrogged their respective sides that we were just talking about. And as a result, they are top of the league. We have got Celtic with a 100% record, 9 points for them, and absolutely boxed Partick Thistle 7-0. That was quite something for them. Rangers, not quite so dramatic with their win, but winning 2-1. I suppose really the big thing coming out of that is that this weekend Rangers will be facing Celtic, which will be the first probably big clash out of those 4 teams. I suppose really the main question with that is, what have you made of the start of the season? I did notice that it was Partick Thistle were live streaming some of their games through their website, which was quite nice. So I was able to watch one of their games, and it was quite bizarre really, because they did look like the place they were playing at was very similar to some of the places that Stevenage would travel to as well, with just the one stand on one side. I was mesmerised by the ball girls that were stood behind the goal, considering there was a fence. So like the ball's going to hit the fence, and they were literally just leaning. I'm sure one of them had a phone, and it was quite something trying to watch that. But I thought an incredible start to the season. So really, out of those 4, which is what it looks like it's going to be, you've got your Glasgow City, your Hibernian, of course, and Celtic and Rangers. They really fought it out last season. Where do we sort of see it going this year?
Yeah, I would expect. I think Glasgow City have done some really good business over the summer, signed a lot of experience, and obviously with their European adventures, haven't played much. But I think I have them slight favourites to win the league. Rangers, I'm quite surprised, had a 2-2 draw with Hearts. I think Hearts have been mid-table for a little while now, so for them to get a good draw against Rangers says a lot. I think Rangers are another who've lost a good couple of players, like someone like Rio Hardy, for example, has been at the club for such a long time now, playing for Bristol City. I think they've lost, maybe Charlton have signed another. Hibs will be up there again. But yeah, really impressed with Celtic so far. Really big wins, really comfortable wins. But yeah, Old Firm's always good. Always really good. I'd favour Celtic. I hope Celtic win. I kind of like Celtic. I'll just get that out of the way now. But also you've got the Edinburgh Derby as well. Hearts welcoming Hibs, I think. And yeah, that'd be really good, seeing what Hearts did to Rangers. If they can pick up again a result against their big city rivals, I think that would be a tone setter, I think we'll call that. But no, really impressed with Celtic so far. But I think I really look forward to Glasgow City maybe coming back and showing what they can do.
Absolutely. Which of the 4 do you think is going to
win it? Is it the title?
Yes.
I'll go Glasgow City.
Interesting. interesting. I mean, I'd like it to be Glasgow City or Hibs, but equally, I mean, it still blows my mind that Glasgow City are actually the most decorated side in Scottish football. When I started looking into that last year and I found that out, that knocked me off my chair. I wasn't expecting that. You think that's going to be Celtic or Rangers, and it absolutely wasn't. And this is why I love this game, because it just throws things, complete curveballs at you. And speaking of throwing curveballs at people, we're rushing through now because obviously time is running out. We need to put a little bit of time aside to pay our respects to Lieke Martens. She's only retired. It's nothing too bad. We're still going to pay our respects to her. But before we do, we've got to pay our respects to the Liga F, Liberty, because there's been some great games already in the opening weekend. Barcelona, lots of people were worried about the fact they only had 16 or 17 players in their team. They nearly had that many goals, which was quite something. I felt sorry for both of the promoted clubs coming in. Was it Alhara, something like that? They were the team that came out. They got absolutely battered, unfortunately for them. So I did feel sorry, and I thought that Logroño were going to have the same problem, but not the case, because they had a player called, and I will get this wrong, Icena. I'm going to call it Icena because I seen a great goal. It's absolutely outrageous. The ball is on the centre circle, and the last time I saw a goal like that, in that exact position, I was watching David Beckham against Wimbledon, and it was a moment to behold. And it's beautiful because it lobs the keeper excellently and it lands directly on the line. Honestly, if you haven't seen it, it's on Twitter, the Zone Women's Football channel. They've got it there. Go and have a little look. But Liberty, what did you make of the opening weekend? The top two sides, it's looking already after one game like Barcelona are still in top gear and everybody else is just watching them go.
Yeah, obviously there was a lot of questions of, is this the season that Real Madrid are going to do it? And then Real Madrid went, you know what? Just going to do a 2-2 draw and we're going to call it a day. And by call it a day, I mean they had to get a 93rd minute equaliser to get a 2-2 draw. Barcelona they've lost a lot of players, but at the end of the day, if you genuinely think about the players that they've lost, other than, I would argue, one player, they're slightly fringe players, sort of the players that you're playing against lower League FA opponents, and maybe it's the fact that their core is still there. They are going to be able to do this. I think the point of concerning about Barcelona is when we get into the nitty-gritty of the season, they're playing 3 times a week, then we go, have they got the depth to actually continue? Or when they're playing against opposition that is Real Madrid, that is Atletico, which is Bilbao, maybe that's when we have the questions of if they've got the abilities to do it. When they're playing newly promoted, they are going to win big. Obviously, the big storyline from the Barcelona game is that Claudio Pina comes on as a sub and scores a hat-trick, casual. Kiki Nazare is back. She got an assist for Pina, which I think is brilliant. Obviously, I think a lot of people watched her over the summer in the Euros and thought she's a really good player. And so to have her back for Barcelona is really good. Eva Payo got a goal and 2 assists. She should have had another one, but the player was offside. It's fine. I'm not bitter. Speaking of good goals, I will go on to Real Madrid, the game in a minute. Did you see Onabadie's goal? Also a really good goal. She first time strike, kind of just from the edge of the box. Barry should go up. If you can stomach watching a goal of hers, really good goal, especially for somebody who's a fullback.
We don't need it. We've got Jade Riviere, so I can happily watch Onabatie and smile.
I would go and watch it. It's a very good goal as well. And yeah, they get 8-0 casual. Somebody I saw on the internet complaining that Alexia didn't have a goal contribution, but she has that she does a pre-assist. If there was such a thing, it would be the most beautiful pre-assist in the world, where she splits the defense with one pass. It goes to Eva Payor, who passes it across to Hansen to get it in to the goal. Hansen's first goal contribution since April in the league, which I think is big because I think slightly her season last season was a bit disappointing. So really good for her to get 2 goals and an assist as well. And enough about them. The Real Madrid game, I don't get it. I think, look, if I'm going to be so honest, Misa was named captain of Real in the summer because Olga left and she was the captain. She is then benched. The first game of the season, she is benched for Merle Frooms. And now Merle Frooms is a very good goalkeeper. But in your first league game of the season against opposition that you cannot guarantee are going to be an easy game because you've never played them before because they're newly promoted, why are you not starting the person you've decided is your captain? That is my one gripe with this, because I think both of Legrano's goals are incredible. They are also completely at fault of Mullafrooms, because she gets lobbed for the first one. Unbelievable goal. I don't want to take anything away from it, but she does get lobbed. She shouldn't be getting lobbed. Second goal goes down as an own goal. The free kick is unbelievable, but it bounces off her head, goes on the post and goes in. She should genuinely being better to save that, and it should not be going down as an own goal. If I was Misa, I'd be like, why have I been named captain then you've benched me? Because I don't understand that. They also had a formation that I can't really understand, and they were trying to play a false nine against a really deep opposition that were going to sit back and happy to sit back because they're newly promoted. They don't really have anything else to do. So for them to have a false nine and sort of not have anything where you kind of need people to come down the wings and send balls in, they didn't really have that until Sigla Brunn came on. She obviously gets the equaliser in extra time. And it's just like, it's a lot of questions. I don't understand what is going on. You've signed Sarah Holmgaard, who's a really good ball crosser, and then you've gone false nine it. Let's do that instead. Just doesn't understand. I don't get it. I think, a new manager, a manager who I believe has not had senior football management experience before. Seems like a theme in Spain. That leaves a question mark about how Real Madrid feel about their women's team. But
Google tells me he was the assistant manager at Torino.
Ooh, joy.
That might be true. It might not be. I couldn't find a page that was telling me anything else on a quick Google there. But
it does leave questions, and you think, look, we can all agree that this is a real opportunity for Real to finally not be 15 points behind Barcelona come March. Genuinely, because if say Eintracht beat Real Madrid and Real Madrid do not have Champions League football this season, they really only have to focus on the league and then Copa del Reina when it comes around. If Barcelona are spread thin between league matches and Champions League, Real Madrid could have a real opportunity of actually getting something here and actually really, really pushing for the title instead of being 15 points behind come March, February, wherever. Yeah. You should not be dropping points in the first game against a newly promoted side, because those are the types of games where you should be winning 8-0, not 8-0. At least you should be winning them and making a really good dent. And it's disappointing that once again Real Madrid seem to be the team that just cannot do it, because the opportunity has literally been given to them by La Liga, the men's overall team, by forcing Barcelona into decisions they've made for fair play rules, and they've gone, nah, actually, you know what? Don't fancy taking that one. So obviously it's first game, a lot to play for still, but it's disappointing. Also, shout out quickly to Atletico Madrid, because they've always been third choice in this league. Well, not always, sorry, because they used to be the top team and they used to beat Barcelona. But recently they've become the third choice. And so to start off with a 5-0 win, really good. And also, last thing, I hate the VAR system and how every single goal has to be checked, because why have we got 9 minutes of added time for no injury? Well, obviously some injuries, but mainly VAR. Hate it in the NWSL, hate it in Liga FA. It's terrible. Sort it out.
No, absolutely. Sorry, I was just checking because somebody's just thrown Alyssa Thompson. Here we go. but I'm not seeing anything that is telling me that has happened yet, just that they're still chatting about it. So bad Chelmer. Don't come in and telling me that unless it's actually true where we got it from. And also there is such thing as a pre-assist liberty. I noticed this when I was having a look at some statistical bits, and they've come up with it now. They call it a second assist, which is actually really what next? A third assist for the person that passed the ball to the person who passed the ball to the person who passed the ball to the person who scored the goal. Mental. Like, honestly, absolutely crazy. But there we go. Sean, for you, anything to add on first weekend of Spanish football?
Not really. It was all going really expertly.
Okay, well, in that case, we'll move on to something, Sean, that I know you do want to talk about, which is, of course, Lieke Martens, who has, at the end of the day, retired at the age of just 32, which feels early to retire. Certainly, she was a Euro winner in 2017 in the Netherlands under Serena, and of course there was no Ballon d'Or for the ladies at that point, so she was just UEFA's Women's Player of the Year, effectively, that they called her in 2017. And what a player she was in that respect. But interestingly enough, she put in her statement that she wanted to be the best mum she could be now, and that's what she wanted to go and do, which is to focus on her family, which is absolutely fine and fair. So I just kind of wonder really what you guys, again, you've been following the game much longer than myself, and so therefore have much more interesting things to say about her history. Finished obviously at PSG, and that is the end for Lieke Martens. So Sean, give us a little bit about why this is actually quite a big piece of news across women's football.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, the first two tournaments I watched were 2015 World Cup in Canada and the 2017 Euros in the Netherlands. And I two players got me into women's football right away. One was Christine Sinclair of Canada, and the other was Lieke Martens. And Shane said that the newer fans of women's football come in, brilliant, we love more fans, but they will never, ever, ever understand just what Lieke Martens could do. Just magical, absolutely magical. Just the ability to create things out of nothing, just the sheer flair, and just you had a feeling whenever she's on the ball. She's one of those players, when she got on the ball, you move to the edge of your seat because you thought, right, something's about to happen. Whether it be a goal, an amazing bit of trickery, one of those mazy dribbles that she was so good at doing. And the Netherlands chapter was one of the, between 2017 and 2019, as star for the Dutch on the wing. And then when she joined Barcelona as well, I think we talk about Putellas, we talk about Bonmati, but I would argue Lieke Martens was the first real superstar that Barcelona team had. She's kick-started this whole run for Barcelona, because once Lieke Martens is there, other non-Spanish players thought, oh, if it's good enough for Lieke Martens, let's go over there. Let's try and see what we can do. And now look what Barcelona have become. Moved to PSG, had a bit of a good spell, and then obviously a bit of injuries, and then obviously brilliant news that she became a mother as well. And of course, that's the most important thing you need to focus on. That football's insignificant in many ways, and if she wants to be the greatest mother she can be, who are we to argue? But one of the very best to have ever done it, one of women's football's earliest superstars, and yeah, gutted she's retired, but yeah, if you're new to women's football, just watch a highlight reel, because just what a player.
No, absolutely. And Liberty, we're going to ask you very much the same sort of question. I mean, Uncle Montana saying her 3 years in Sweden was quite a good run, because obviously she did have clubs prior to Barca and PSG. In particular, the 3 years I think that he's on about there, obviously was at Rosengard, but also Kopperbergs and Göteborg. And what's really got me there is I genuinely just thought that was a cider, and I didn't realise that might have been named after a place. So that blew my mind looking at that today. all that time, and I just thought it was a nice foreign word, and actually it could be a place. So I'm going to go and sit in the corner and rethink my life choices as to understanding what these things mean. Whilst you tell us just a little bit more as well about what Lieke Martens meant to you.
That, as he's just pointed out, as I was about to say, stole the words right from my mouth. So now what we know is BK Häcken, out of Gothenburg. So if you ever see, like Kristen Press or Lieke Martens or loads of players, if you ever see that name of a club in their list, it's what we now call BK Häcken because they joined with the men's team.
How is that? Oh, right. I was just going to say, how can that happen? Because I can't see a Copperberg and a Goatberg in that name. So where's that come from?
I'm not sure where I mean, Gothenburg is the city, which is where Häcken are from in the country. I'm not sure where Copperberg comes from.
It's all right. I've given you away from something that we shouldn't be talking about. People have got Google and Siri. They can ask that. Go on, get on with Lieke. That's brilliant. Tell us about
that. I saw a tweet earlier, which I think really sums up how I'm thinking about this all. And it was something along the lines of Lieke Martens ran so Bateas and Bonmati could walk, or is it the other way around? Sean's nodding, so I'm thinking I've got it the right way around. But essentially, she did the hard work to make them shine in terms of what we think of Barcelona, not like literally, but like in terms of her impact on Barcelona helped them. And I think that it's those kind of players that we, in 20 years from now, will look back on and think, what an unsung hero. And that's not to say that she's not talked about or sung about as such, but it's genuinely sort of, she's talked about enough, but not enough. You know, people know her name, but she's never in these sort of conversations of the greatest we've seen, purely because new fans, as Sean said, may have not watched her, or they joined at a point where her height was over as such. But I think at the end of the day, I always think this with retiring players, but especially players that are so good. I always think as long as she is retiring with her head held high and she's got what she wants out of the game, that's good enough for me, because at the end of the day, as said, players' happiness is the most important thing. And I hope her and her family are so happy that they get to have her all the time. You know, her little kid, that is so cute. Not that is so cute. The fact that she has a kid is cute, not the kid itself, because that would be really rude to say. But she's an incredible player, the sort of player where I'm a nerd and I love watching highlight reels of players from past, present, up and coming. I think it's a really great way of learning about the sport. And I remember the first time I watched a highlight reel of hers on YouTube and just thinking, Jesus Christ, she's so talented. And then also, I will never be that talented about anything, which I think is great. That's kind of fun. She's definitely of a generation of Dutch players in women's football that won't have the sort of long-lasting. No, that's not what I mean. Sorry, let me rephrase. Part of a Dutch generation that won't get the long-lasting chat that they deserve, the same way as England or have, or even the US team. I think that the Netherlands as a footballing country is so small, not physically, but in comparison with the US or England on the sort of global footballing scale, that they won't have this sort of chat. And I think that is where it's important for the likes of us, of other fans, to keep talking, because one day I don't want to get to a point where you go, oh, Lieke Martens, what a player, and somebody goes, who? That's not where we want to be. So I think the fact that we are giving some time to give her flowers and say congratulations and good luck is brilliant, because what a player, what a winger, what a talent. And I hope she doesn't go too far from football. I hope she is still in and around in whatever capacity she wants that to be, because I think that is important as well, because I think she will have a addition to the conversation going forward, which could be really interesting, especially from a Dutch point of view, as they sort of start this new era of Dutch football, both internationally and potentially in the league as well. So yeah, I hope she doesn't go too far, because I'd love to know what her thinking is on the game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the pair of you have done her proud there, and of course, if you want to, you can follow her on Instagram, where she posted her retirement post, and it was quite interesting because, again, you guys hearing you speak about her was quite something. She's not a player that I can claim to have known a lot about, as I say, although I came to women's football in 2018 when Manchester United made their women's team, or reformed their women's team, I should say. And obviously a lot of my focus has been around England and the UK, and that's what I say with this channel. I'm trying to get everybody to grow with me effectively in terms of learning everything that's going on. So I make mistakes. People will see that on Twitter. I'll have written things down. I'll call Lindsay Heaps, Lindsay Horan, and all those sorts of things. And I will make these errors because I'm learning. And that's the whole point. I'm learning, you're learning, hopefully. And that's why I get people like Sean and Liberty onto the show, because they are very intelligent people who have been following the wider world of football in terms of the women's game, certainly much longer than I. But it was quite a thing to read her post on Instagram, because that's the reason why I went through that entire little speech there, is that I didn't really know her, but I read it and it actually made me feel a little bit emotional, hearing how she was talking about wanting to be a professional footballer, and it wasn't really a thing when she started, but now look at it, it's a really big thing. And she's one of those players who, as you said there, Liberty, has done the hard work for the current generation of young people that are coming into this with a viable career option potentially. And I just think that is, for me, if you're going to sit there and start talking about where a legacy comes into it, I think something like this is a good time to say thank you for people like that have really worked hard to get the women's game where it currently is. And yes, well done, Uncle Montana, for just explaining to the people that may not have known what I was talking about. So yeah, there you go. Mistakes, they're made. What can I say? Well, it's been a delight, an absolute delight. We have managed to get through all the stuff that we were going to talk about. And my goodness, what a journey it has been. We've seen what's going on with Europe. We've seen what's going on in America. And the great news is there's even more to come, because I'm fairly certain we've got some more leagues kicking off over the course of the next few weeks. And not least the WSL. So there's going to be plenty for us to chat about. Sean, Liberty, thank you. Do a quick shout out. Where can people find all of your glorious ramblings?
At Sean Miser on Twitter, at Sean Miser on TikTok. Welsh League starting up again on Sunday. Got the launch date tomorrow, so expect content all week, and then back again for Sunday. Start all over again. But thank you, Barry, for having me on.
I know you're biased, but are Cardiff definitely winning that again, or can you see people potentially challenging?
I'm neutral. I'm not biased.
Love the word you're saying, neutral, there, but you definitely did say that Cardiff City might potentially be the best team in the world at this point on one of your tweets. So I'm not having that.
No, best male team, top of League One, and we might win.
I see. Gotcha.
If Cardiff entered the World Cup, Cardiff would win the World Cup at this stage. I think a three-way battle between Cardiff, Wrexham, and TNS this season is what I'll plump for.
Lovely stuff. And Liberty?
I don't know if Connor's still here, but if Connor's still here, he's going to make fun of what I'm about to say. Everything is just my name, which is Liberty Simons, which is the boy's name with an S on the end. Connor always makes fun of me because I say that, but that is genuinely the easiest way to tell people what my name is, because else people put extra M's, put a D, put a Y in it, which isn't there. It's just Simon. And yeah, obviously WSL is back this weekend. Who cares about that? Bundesliga will be back soon. The French League will be back soon. Those are way more fun than the WSL, so I'll be over there. Obviously, Damallsvenskan is getting into crunch time, and there is a huge match this weekend at The 3 Arena, Hammarby will host Malmo, which is going to be top of the table clash because Malmo, newly promoted side this season, are currently top of the table, but unfortunately for them, it is incredibly close between Häcken, Hammarby, and Malmo. This genuinely could be a decider for where some of these teams come in the league. I know it's only September, but the league finishes the middle of November, so genuinely this is a really big game if people want something to watch. And if you are in Sweden, go down to 3 Arena. It's one of the best stadiums I've ever been to. I love it a lot. It's going to be a really good clash. But if you can't watch it, don't worry. It's on Saturday, so I'm going to be at Arsenal, but I'll be talking about it anyway. Sorry, that was me realising that it kicks off at 12 UK time, and I'll already be travelling to the Emirates for Arsenal. They could coordinate what time Arsenal and Hammarby kick off, so I can actually watch games. Would be great. Anyways, yeah, I'll be talking about that. Talking about Bundesliga. Will Frankfurt sink or float? Who knows? But yeah, just lots of different things as ever, and it is Liberty Science.
Excellent stuff. Well done. I've got to be honest, this is how you know Liberty works incredibly hard. She does superb stuff. You've seen that before. We've been live now for an hour and 36 minutes. For an hour and 34 minutes, she was so beautifully informed about everything that it was she was going to talk about. And then just there, we're building it up. Make sure you're watching it. Swedish football is going to be superb. Make sure you're watching it just like, oh no, not me, I'm off to Arsenal. And at that point, it just out went the plug and everything went with it. So yes, make sure you're watching the Swedish football just like she won't be. You will find it. There's plenty of stuff. And Liberty does do great things. So there you go. This is what happens when we let her go off script. So there we are. Brilliant. Thank you so much, the pair of you. It's been a brilliant chat. We're looking forward to these. There's going to be 7 day weeks, of course there are 7 day roundups every week from now on, really. That's kind of where we're going to be looking. So can't wait to get to them. We'll see you next Monday at our usual time of 8:30. Can't wait. It's been an absolute pleasure. And let's be honest, we can probably sign off with what Sipiway said. Until we meet again, let's make sure you have yourself a good evening.